Lonely rancher gave shelter to a mother of twins, banished for not naming the father. The Montana winter of 1887 struck with biblical fury, burying Tom Harrison's ranch under 3 feet of snow. At 42, the weathered rancher stood at his cabin window, watching the blizzard rage across his land like God's own wrath. His gray-streaked beard couldn't hide the permanent lines of sorrow carved around his dark eyes, marks left by 5 years of grief since consumption claimed his wife Catherine and their unborn child. The howling wind bent the cottonwoods near the creek until they screamed in protest. Tom pulled his wool coat tighter, the cold seeping through the glass despite the roaring fire behind him. His boots echoed hollowly on the wooden floor as he moved through rooms that had once been filled with Catherine's laughter and dreams of children who would never come. He poured bitter coffee from the pot and settled into his worn leather chair. The cattle would be huddled in the lower pasture shelter, horses safe in the barn. Nothing to do but wait out nature's tantrum, alone as always. The knocking came so softly that Tom almost missed it over the storm's fury. But there it was again. Desperate, human, barely audible. He grabbed his lantern and coat, yanking on boots as he headed for the door. Who would be insane enough to travel in this weather? Tom unlatched the heavy door and was immediately slammed by freezing wind and snow. At first he saw nothing but swirling white chaos. Then his lantern caught something dark huddled against his porch, a figure wrapped in a thin shawl nearly buried in snow. "Sweet Jesus," he muttered, setting the lantern down and reaching for the person. As he lifted them, he realized it was a young woman, her lips blue with cold, dark hair crusted with ice. She was barely conscious, mumbling in Spanish. But what made Tom's heart stop was what she clutched against her chest, 2 small bundles wrapped in what appeared to be her own petticoat, both moving slightly. Twin babies, and they were alive. Without hesitation, Tom carried the woman and her children into his cabin, kicking the door shut behind him. He rushed to the fire, laying her on the thick rug in front of the hearth. She was young, probably 20, with olive skin pale from cold but strong features that spoke of determination. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Tom knelt beside her, gently taking one baby while she instinctively held the other closer. The infant in his arms was tiny but breathing steadily, its small fist waving in the warm air. The sight hit him like a physical blow, memories of Catherine's pregnancy flooding back with painful clarity. The woman's eyes fluttered open, revealing deep brown irises filled with fear and exhaustion. She tried to sit up, clutching her remaining baby protectively. "Please," she whispered in accented English, her voice hoarse. "My babies. Are they?" "They're fine," Tom assured her, his voice gentler than it had been in years. "You're all safe now." He fetched blankets from his bedroom and returned to find her sitting against the hearth, both infants nursing quietly beneath her thin shawl. The sight was both beautiful and heartbreaking. A young mother with nothing but fierce determination to keep her children alive. "What's your name?" Tom asked, wrapping a quilt around her shoulders. "Maria Santos," she replied, not meeting his eyes. "And you are very kind, senor." "Tom Harrison. This is my ranch." He studied her exhausted face. "How did you come to be out in a storm like this?" Maria's jaw tightened. "It does not matter where I came from. I cannot go back." The pain in her voice was unmistakable. Tom recognized it because he carried his own version of the same wound. He didn't press for details, instead moving to prepare food. "When did you last eat?" "Yesterday morning, I think. Maybe before." Her voice was small, ashamed. Tom nodded and began making hearty stew, adding vegetables and thick bread. As he worked, he listened to the soft sounds behind him. Baby's gentle cries, Maria's quiet Spanish lullabies, the rustle of fabric as she adjusted their makeshift blankets. "The storm should pass by tomorrow evening," he said without turning around. "But roads won't be clear for days. I understand. I will leave as soon as possible. I do not wish to impose." Tom paused in his stirring. There was no hint of where she might go. She spoke like someone with nowhere to turn. "Where will you go?" he asked, finally facing her. Maria's composure cracked slightly as she held her babies closer. "I will find somewhere. Perhaps the next town. With 2 newborns? In winter?" Tom's voice was matter-of-fact, not accusatory. "That's not much of a plan." Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them back stubbornly. "I have no choice, Mr. Harrison." Tom served stew in his largest bowl and brought it to her with hot coffee. "Eat first." We'll worry about the rest later. As Maria ate hungrily, Tom studied her more closely. She was beautiful, with natural grace even in her desperate circumstances. Her hands, though roughened by work, were gentle as she managed to eat while keeping both babies close. "How old are they?" he asked. 3 weeks, Maria replied softly. "This is Elena." She indicated the baby on her left. "And Miguel. They are good babies. Very quiet." Tom felt his throat tighten. 3 weeks old and already facing more hardship than most would see in a lifetime. "They're beautiful." Maria's eyes filled with tears again. "They deserve better than this. They deserve a father who—" She stopped abruptly. "The father?" Tom asked gently. "There is no father," Maria said firmly, but Tom heard the lie. That is what everyone believes. The bitterness in her words told Tom everything. Someone had hurt this young woman badly, and she was protecting his identity at the cost of her own future. "You said you can't go back. What happened?" Maria's face hardened. "I brought shame to my family, to my town. They made it clear I was no longer welcome." She lifted her chin defiantly. "I would rather face the wilderness than their judgment." "And the father just let you leave?" "He has a wife," Maria said quietly. "A respectable wife, children. I will not destroy his family, even if it means destroying yourself?" Maria looked down at her sleeping babies. "I would do anything to protect them, Mr. Harrison. Anything." The wind continued howling outside, but inside the cabin something had shifted. For the first time in 5 years, Tom's house felt alive again. The sound of babies, the presence of someone who needed his help. It stirred something he'd thought buried with Catherine. "Maria," he said quietly, "sometimes life gives us chances to make something good out of something broken." She looked up at him with those deep brown eyes, and Tom saw hope flickering there like a candle flame in the darkness. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, 3 lost souls had found something they'd thought was gone forever. The possibility of family, of belonging, of home. 3 days passed before the storm exhausted itself, leaving behind a world transformed by snowdrifts that reached the cabin windows. Tom had given Maria his bedroom while he slept by the fire, but neither rested easily. The baby's cries punctuated the nights, and Tom found himself lying awake, listening to Maria's soft Spanish lullabies drifting through the walls. On the 4th morning, brilliant sunshine streamed through frost-covered glass, turning the landscape into a glittering wonderland. Tom was digging a path to the barn when he heard approaching horses. His neighbor Jake Morrison appeared through the drifts with Sheriff Bill Hawkins and Reverend Coleman. "Tom," Jake called out, dismounting. "Thank God you're all right. We were worried when the storm hit." "I'm fine, Jake," Tom replied, but his eyes were wary. News traveled fast in small communities, and he suspected this wasn't just a welfare check. Before anyone could respond, the cabin door opened, and Maria appeared, carrying both babies. She'd cleaned up with the supplies Tom provided, wearing one of Catherine's old blue dresses that he'd quietly left for her. Even in the oversized garment, she was strikingly beautiful. The 3 visitors stared with obvious judgment that made Tom's jaw clench. Sheriff Hawkins tipped his hat formally. "Ma'am, would you be Maria Santos?" "I am," Maria replied, lifting her chin. "We've had inquiries about you from Cedar Creek Way. Seems there's concern about your whereabouts. I am here of my own free will. I have broken no laws." Reverend Coleman, a thin man with severe features, stepped forward. "Miss Santos, surely you understand the irregularity of your situation. An unmarried woman with children staying alone with a bachelor, it creates talk." Tom felt his temper rising. She needed shelter from the storm. I wasn't about to let her and 2 babies freeze to death. "Of course not," Jake said quickly. Tom did the Christian thing. "We're just concerned about what happens next." Sheriff Hawkins cleared his throat. "There's been discussion in town about proper placement of the children. Mrs. Whitmore at the orphanage could take them, give them proper upbringing." Maria's face went pale as she held the babies closer. "No, they stay with me. Miss Santos," Reverend Coleman's tone was condescending, "surely you see that your situation makes it difficult to provide properly for these children. They need stability, a proper home. They need their mother," Maria interrupted, her voice shaking. Tom watched the exchange with growing anger. He recognized the barely concealed contempt, the way they spoke about Maria as if she weren't there. It reminded him of how town ladies had whispered about Catherine's miscarriages. "Gentlemen," Tom said calmly, "Miss Santos and her children are welcome here as long as they need shelter." Sheriff Hawkins frowned. "Tom, think about your reputation. People are talking about you harboring an unmarried mother. It's not proper. Since when is Christian charity improper?" "It's not charity we're questioning," Reverend Coleman said primly. "It's the appearance of impropriety. A young woman, an older man, living together without marriage." The implication hung in the air like poison. Tom felt his fists clench. "Are you suggesting I would take advantage of a woman seeking help?" "We're just saying people talk," Jake said hastily. "And talk can be damaging." Maria stepped forward, babies clutched protectively. "Please, I do not wish to cause trouble for Mr. Harrison. If my presence creates problems, I will leave." "And go where?" Tom demanded. "With 2 babies and no money? In winter? I will manage," Maria said, but her voice wavered. "No, you won't. You'll freeze or starve or both." Tom turned back to the men. "If the town has a problem with me helping someone in need, then the town has bigger problems than gossip." "Tom, be reasonable," Sheriff Hawkins sighed. "There are proper channels. The church has resources that would separate her from her children. For their own good," Reverend Coleman insisted. "These children deserve a decent life, not to be raised in moral ambiguity." Something snapped in Tom. "Moral ambiguity? You mean poverty? My wife and I tried for years to have children. Years of hoping and losing babies before they could draw breath. And you're suggesting healthy children should be torn from a mother who would die for them because she doesn't meet your moral standards?" Heavy silence followed. Maria stared at Tom with wonder, as if she couldn't believe someone was defending her so fiercely. Finally, Sheriff Hawkins spoke. "Tom, what exactly are you proposing? That she just stays indefinitely?" Tom looked at Maria, seeing the fear and desperation she tried to hide. He thought of Catherine, of empty rooms, of long, lonely evenings with only memories for company. He thought of babies crying in the night, and how it stirred something he'd thought buried forever. "I'm proposing," Tom said slowly, "that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't fit into neat categories." "The right thing," Reverend Coleman said stiffly, "would be for Miss Santos to seek proper forgiveness. Failing that, the children should be placed with suitable families." "Her family cast her out," Tom said bluntly, "and I noticed none of you are volunteering to take 2 babies." "That's different," Jake protested. "We have our own responsibilities." "Exactly my point. It's easy to make moral pronouncements when you're not living with the consequences." Maria suddenly spoke, her voice stronger. "Mr. Harrison, I cannot ask you to sacrifice your reputation for me. I knew I would face judgment." "Are you prepared to watch your children starve?" Tom asked gently. "Because that's what will happen if you leave with nowhere to go." Tears filled her eyes. "I have jewelry I can sell, my grandmother's ring, perhaps enough for passage to California." "California?" Sheriff Hawkins snorted. "Miss, do you know what that journey costs? What it involves for a woman alone with infants?" "I am stronger than I look," Maria said with quiet dignity. Tom studied her face, seeing desperation behind brave words. He made a decision that surprised even him. "There's another option," he said quietly. Everyone turned to stare. Tom felt his heart pounding as he spoke words he never thought he'd say again. "Miss Santos could stay here permanently. As my wife." The silence was deafening. Maria's eyes went wide with shock. "Tom," Jake finally said, "you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. It would solve everyone's problems. Miss Santos would have security for herself and her children. The town would have its propriety. And I would have a family again." Maria stared as if he'd lost his mind. "Mr. Harrison, you cannot possibly. You do not know me. I know enough. I know you'd walk into a blizzard to protect your children. I know you'd rather face death than live without dignity. I know you have strength most people only dream of. But marriage," she whispered, "would be in name only, if you prefer," Tom said, face reddening, but voice firm. "You'd have your own room, your space. I'm offering partnership, not romance. A practical arrangement benefiting us both." Sheriff Hawkins found his voice. "Tom, this is madness. You can't marry a woman you've known 4 days. Why not? People marry for worse reasons. At least this serves a purpose beyond social convenience." Reverend Coleman stepped forward, face flushed. I refuse to perform such a ceremony. It would mock the sacred institution of marriage. Then we'll find someone who will. Judge Patterson and Helena would do it. Maria was still staring, babies sleeping in her arms. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for strangers? Tom looked at her for a long moment. Because 5 years ago, my wife died carrying our child. Because this house has been dead since. Because those babies deserve to grow up with their mother. And because sometimes life gives you a chance to make something good out of something broken. The wind picked up again, whistling around the cabin corners, reminding them all of harsh frontier realities. Tom's offer hung in the air like a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. Imperfect, perhaps, but infinitely better than the alternative. In that moment, 3 hearts began to hope again. Maria didn't answer immediately. For 2 days after the men left, she and Tom moved around each other carefully, both aware everything had changed with his proposal. The babies provided distraction, but in quiet moments, when Elena and Miguel slept, and only the crackling fire broke the silence, the weight of the decision pressed down on them both. Tom found himself watching Maria when he thought she wasn't looking. She hummed Spanish melodies while working, filling the cabin with warmth. She'd taken over cooking without being asked, transforming his simple ingredients into meals that reminded him food could be more than sustenance. Her presence had awakened something in the house that had been dormant too long. On the 3rd evening, as Tom read by the fire and Maria nursed the babies in the rocking chair, she finally spoke. Your wife. What was she like? Tom set down his book, surprised. No one had asked about Catherine in years, thinking it would cause pain. But the real pain came from silence, from pretending she'd never existed. She was like sunshine after a storm. Everything seemed brighter when she was around. She found joy in the smallest things, wildflowers by the creek, morning light across the kitchen table, rain on the roof. Maria nodded, shifting Miguel to her other arm. She would have loved these little ones. Yes, she would have fought the devil himself to protect them. Is that why you made your offer? Because you think it's what she would have wanted? Tom considered carefully. Partly, but mostly because it's what I want. This house has been a tomb for 5 years, Maria. Since you've been here, it feels like a home again. Maria was quiet, fingers gently stroking Miguel's dark hair. In my village, there was an old woman named Esperanza. She said God sometimes sends angels in unexpected forms. Perhaps this is one of those times. Does that mean? It means I accept your proposal, Mr. Harrison, but with conditions. Tom felt his heart skip. Name them. First, you must call me Maria, and I will call you Tom. We cannot build partnership hiding behind formalities. Agreed. Second, I will contribute to this household in every way I can. I will not be a burden. I will cook, clean, help with ranch work when the babies are older. This must be true partnership. I wouldn't have it any other way. Maria took a deep breath. Third, if you ever regret this decision, if you ever wish me gone, you have only to say so. I will leave immediately with no reproach. Maria, Tom protested, but she held up her hand. And finally, you must promise never to ask about the father of my children. That part of my life is closed forever. Tom nodded solemnly. I promise. Though I'll say this. Any man who could abandon you and those babies is a fool who doesn't deserve your protection. Tears glittered in Maria's eyes. Then we have an agreement, Tom Harrison. The next morning they made the treacherous journey to Helena, babies bundled in every warm blanket Tom owned. Judge Patterson, a pragmatic man who'd seen enough frontier life to understand that survival sometimes required unconventional solutions, performed the ceremony in his chambers with his clerk and wife as witnesses. Maria wore Catherine's wedding dress, which Tom had quietly retrieved from storage. The cream silk and lace, hastily altered, made her look ethereal. Tom wore his one good suit, the same one from Catherine's funeral, hair brushed and beard trimmed. The ceremony was brief and practical, but when Judge Patterson pronounced them husband and wife, Tom felt a rightness he hadn't experienced in years. As they signed the certificate, Maria's hand trembled and Tom gently covered it with his own. No regrets? He whispered. No regrets, she replied, though her voice shook. The journey home was quiet, both lost in thought. It wasn't until they were safely back and the babies settled that reality hit them. "I suppose I should move to the spare room," Tom said awkwardly. "Tom," Maria said softly, "this is your home. I should adjust. You're my wife now, that makes it your home too." They settled into a routine that felt surprisingly natural. Tom handled outdoor work, feeding cattle, maintaining buildings, cutting firewood, while Maria managed the household and cared for the babies. Evenings found them by the fire, Tom reading aloud while Maria mended clothes or simply held the children. The babies thrived in their new security. Elena was quieter, content to watch the world with serious dark eyes, while Miguel was more vocal, demanding attention with lusty cries that made Tom chuckle. Both had inherited their mother's olive skin and dark hair, growing stronger daily. One March evening, as spring's first hints showed in lengthening days, Maria made an announcement. "I want to learn to read English better. I can speak well enough, but reading, I struggle with longer words." "I'd be happy to teach you," Tom offered immediately. "Would you? I do not wish to be ignorant. If I am to be a proper wife and mother in this country, I should improve myself." "Maria, you're already extraordinary." She blushed. "You are kind, but I know there is much to learn about American ways." Their evenings took on new dimension. After the babies were settled, Tom would sit beside Maria on the settee, guiding her through various books. She was a quick learner, her determination admirable. Sometimes their hands would brush as she pointed to difficult words, and Tom found himself acutely aware of her warmth, the faint lavender scent in her hair. It was during one lesson that disaster struck. Tom had ridden to town for supplies, leaving Maria alone for the first time since their marriage. He'd been reluctant to go, but they needed medicine for Elena's slight cough, and Maria insisted she'd be fine. He returned to find Sheriff Hawkins' horse outside and Maria on the porch, face pale with anger and fear. Through the open door, Tom could see the sheriff inside with Mrs. Whitmore from the orphanage and a well-dressed stranger. "What's going on?" Tom demanded, dismounting quickly. Sheriff Hawkins emerged, expression apologetic but determined. "Tom, I'm sorry, but we've received a formal complaint. Someone's challenged your marriage's legitimacy." Tom felt blood drain from his face. "What are you talking about?" Mrs. Whitmore stepped forward. "Mr. Harrison, it's come to our attention that this marriage may have been contracted under false pretenses. Ms. Santos may have misrepresented certain facts." "What facts?" Tom asked, though dread was building. The stranger, a cold-eyed woman in expensive clothes, spoke up. "My name is Mrs. Eleanor Ashford. I represent certain parties who have legal claim on those children." Maria had gone completely white. "No," she whispered. "Mrs. Harrison," Mrs. Ashford continued with false sympathy, "surely you understand these children belong with their rightful family. Their father has decided to acknowledge them and provide proper upbringing. He has no rights," Maria said, voice shaking with rage. "He abandoned us. He wanted nothing to do with us. Circumstances change. He's prepared to offer the children a proper home, with moral guidance and financial security." Tom stepped protectively in front of Maria. "The children stay with their mother. End of discussion." "I'm afraid it's not that simple," Sheriff Hawkins said reluctantly. "If there's a legal father willing to claim them." "There is no legal father," Maria said desperately. "I have never named anyone." Mrs. Ashford smiled coldly. "Perhaps not publicly, but we have evidence suggesting otherwise. Documents that could prove very interesting in court." Tom felt rage building. "What kind of evidence?" "The kind that would not only establish paternity but also question your marriage's validity. After all, if Mrs. Harrison was already involved with another man at your wedding, it might constitute fraud." The threat hung like poison in the air. Tom understood. They were suggesting Maria had been someone's mistress, that she might have been pregnant by a married man now ready to claim his illegitimate children while destroying her reputation. "You're bluffing," Tom said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I? Certain prominent community members are very interested in ensuring these children receive proper care. Children of important bloodlines deserve better than questionable circumstances." Maria suddenly stepped forward, eyes blazing. "Get out," she said quietly. "Get out of my home." "Mrs. Harrison," Mrs. Ashford began, but Maria cut her off. "Get out!" Maria shouted, voice echoing off cabin walls. You come here with threats and lies, trying to steal my babies and dare call yourself Christian? Get out." The visitors exchanged glances. Sheriff Hawkins tipped his hat awkwardly. "We'll be back, Tom, with proper legal documents if necessary. This isn't over." As they rode away, Maria collapsed onto the porch steps, whole body shaking. Tom sat beside her, wanting to comfort but unsure how. "Maria," he said gently. "Who is he? Who's the father?" For a moment he thought she wouldn't answer. Then in a voice so quiet he had to strain to hear, she whispered a name that made his blood run cold. "Judge Henry Morrison, Jake's brother, the territorial judge." Tom closed his eyes, understanding flooding through him. Judge Morrison was one of the territory's most powerful men, married to a wealthy rancher's daughter, father to 3 legitimate children. If he'd decided to claim Elena and Miguel, he had the legal power and political influence to make it happen. But Tom had made a promise at an altar, and he intended to keep it, no matter the cost. Judge Henry Morrison arrived 3 days later, not with hired men and lawyers, but alone. Tom watched from his window as the distinguished man dismounted, his expensive coat and polished boots marking him as someone accustomed to deference and respect. Tom stepped onto his porch, rifle held casually but ready. "Judge Morrison." "Tom." Henry's voice carried the authority of a man who'd never been denied anything he wanted. "I believe we need to talk." "About what?" "About my children." Maria appeared in the doorway behind Tom, both babies in her arms. When Henry saw her, his composed facade cracked slightly, revealing something that might have been guilt or longing. "Maria," he said quietly. "Henry." Her voice was ice. "Come to claim your bastards now that your wife can't give you more heirs." Henry flinched but recovered quickly. "I've come to do what's right. Those children deserve their rightful place in society, not to be raised in these circumstances." "These circumstances?" Tom stepped forward. "You mean love? Security? A mother who'd die for them?" "I mean poverty and illegitimacy," Henry replied coldly. "I can give them everything. Education, position, a future worthy of the Morrison name." "And what about their mother?" Maria asked, her voice deadly quiet. Henry's silence was answer enough. He wanted his children, but not the woman who bore them. "I see," Maria said, tears streaming down her face. "You would steal them from me entirely." "It's for the best," Henry said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You're young. You can start over, find someone suitable." "I have found someone suitable," Maria replied, moving closer to Tom. "I have found a man who loves these children not because they carry his blood, but because they are mine. A man who offered me marriage not to possess me, but to protect me." Tom felt his heart swell as Maria continued. "You speak of what's right, Henry. What was right was standing by me when I needed you. What was right was claiming these children when they were born, not now when it's convenient." Henry's composure finally cracked. "You don't understand the pressures I face, the expectations." "I understand perfectly," Maria said with devastating calm. "You're a coward who ruins young women and then tries to steal the consequences when they become inconvenient." The words hit Henry like physical blows. For a moment, Tom almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Those are my children," Henry said desperately. "My blood, my legacy." "No," Tom said firmly. "Those are Maria's children. She carried them, birthed them, nearly died protecting them. Blood doesn't make a father, Henry. Love does. Sacrifice does. Being there when it matters does." Jake Morrison chose that moment to arrive, riding hard up the road. He took in the scene, his brother standing alone against Tom and Maria united, and his face filled with disgust. "Jesus, Henry, what are you doing?" "Claiming what's mine," Henry replied, but his voice was weak. "What's yours?" Jake's voice rose. "You threw her out, Henry. You called her a whore and threw money at her to disappear. Now she's found happiness, built a family, and you want to destroy that too. The children need their mother," Jake said firmly. "And they have a father now, a real one." Henry looked around desperately, seeing his support crumbling. "I have legal authority, I can take them." "Try it," Tom said quietly. "But understand this, I'll fight you in every court in the territory. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you really are. A judge who abandons pregnant women, then uses his position to steal children when it suits him. The threat hung in the air. Henry Morrison had built his reputation on being an honorable man. If the truth came out, if people learned he'd seduced and abandoned a young woman in his employ, his career would be over. Maria stepped forward, her voice gentle now. "Henry, look at them. Really look at them." She turned to Elena and Miguel so he could see their faces. "They are beautiful, aren't they? Perfect and innocent and full of promise." Henry's eyes filled with tears as he stared at his children. "Do you know what Elena's favorite sound is?" Maria continued. "It's Tom reading aloud in the evenings. She stops crying every time she hears his voice. And Miguel? He only sleeps peacefully when he can hear us all talking by the fire. They don't need your name or your money, Henry. They need love, and they have that here." "I could have loved them too," Henry whispered. "Then you should have loved their mother," Tom said simply. "You had your chance, Henry. You chose your reputation over your responsibility. Now it's too late." Henry stared at the children for a long moment, then at Maria, then at Tom. Finally, his shoulders sagged in defeat. "If I walk away," he said quietly, "if I leave them with you, will you tell them about me when they're older?" Maria considered this. "I will tell them their biological father was a man who made mistakes but ultimately wanted what was best for them. I will not poison them with bitterness." Henry nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he whispered. Then louder, "They're yours, Tom. Legally, officially, completely yours. I'll draw up the papers." As Henry rode away, broken and defeated, Tom put his arm around Maria's shoulders. She was crying too, but these were tears of relief, of victory, of gratitude. "Is it really over?" she whispered. "It's over," Tom confirmed. "We're a family now, really and truly." Jake lingered, watching his brother disappear down the road. "He'll keep his word," he said quietly. "Henry may be a fool, but he's an honorable fool." That evening, as they sat by the fire with Elena and Miguel sleeping peacefully in their arms, Maria looked at Tom with eyes full of love. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Taking us in, marrying me, fighting for us?" Tom looked around at his home, truly alive now with the sounds of family, warm with laughter and love and hope. He thought of Catherine, and somehow he knew she would have approved. She would have loved Maria and the children, would have fought beside him to protect them. "Never," he said firmly. "This is what I was meant to do, Maria. You and Elena and Miguel, you're my second chance at happiness. My family." Outside, the Montana wind whispered through the cottonwoods, but inside the Harrison home, 3 hearts beat in perfect harmony. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with passion, but with compassion. Sometimes the strongest families are built not on blood, but on choice, sacrifice, and the fierce determination to protect what matters most. Tom Harrison had lost one family to fate, but had chosen to build another through love, and in the end that made all the difference. What did you think of Tom and Maria's incredible journey? Did their story touch your heart the way it touched ours? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Which moment moved you the most? Tom's unexpected proposal, Maria's fierce protection of her children, or perhaps the final confrontation with Judge Morrison's representatives? If you enjoyed this powerful tale of love, sacrifice, and the true meaning of family, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable stories that celebrate the strength of the human spirit. Your support helps us bring these emotional journeys to life, and we can't wait to share the next incredible story with you.